A plane vanished without a trace. No distress call, no wreckage. Just 115 lives gone. At first, it looked like a tragic accident, but what if it wasn't? What if this wasn't a disaster, but a calculated act of terror orchestrated by a nation itself? This is the chilling story behind one of the most shocking aviation bombings in history. Korean Air Flight 858. The tale of spies, forged identities, and a regime so desperate to stop the Seoul Olympics. They were willing to murder over 100 innocent civilians in cold blood. And it all began with a cigarette pack and a time bomb. Let's dive into today's story. It was November 29th, 1987, just like any other day. That afternoon, a plane lifted off from Saddam International Airport in Iraq, and the flight was Korean Air Flight 858. On board were 115 people, 104 passengers, and 11 crew members, heading out across the skies without a hint of trouble. The aircraft glided smoothly, making its way over the Indian Ocean above the airspace near Burma. Everything seemed normal, calm, and peaceful. But then suddenly, without warning, the plane vanished from radar. Just like that, it was gone. Panic erupted, the control tower scrambled, and South Korea was suddenly thrown into emergency mode. Where was KAL 858? What had happened to the plane carrying 115 innocent lives? As the world held its breath, theories began to swirl. Maybe it was bad weather, could have been a free gust of wind, mechanical failure perhaps. Speculation spread fast, but something didn't add up. No distress signal, not even a flicker of an SOS from the cockpit, and no debris, no trace of the plane anywhere in the sea. Then came a discovery that sent shockwaves around the globe. The plane hadn't crashed by accident. It had been deliberately bombed, a terrorist attack. All 115 people on board were killed instantly. But who would do such a thing, and why? That same day, Flight 858 had made a scheduled stopover at Abu Dhabi International Airport in the UAE. 2 passengers, a man and a woman, both appearing to be Japanese tourists, got off the plane. But something was off. Authorities soon discovered they were traveling on fake passports. The man identified himself as Shinichi Hachiya, age 70. The woman, Mayumi Hachiya, just 25. But their real names were far more sinister. Kim Seung-il and Kim Yeon-hee, North Korean agents posing as father and daughter. After being detained, the pair tried to take their own lives, biting down on cyanide capsules hidden inside a cigarette pack. Kim Seung-il died on the spot, but Kim Yeon-hee survived. Her capsule was snatched away just in time. At first, authorities thought they were just regular criminals using forged documents. Plans were already in motion to extradite them to Japan for questioning. But then the South Korean government stepped in. That method of trying to take their own lives, cyanide capsules, it's a North Korean tactic. South Korea swiftly extradited Kim Yeon-hee to Seoul. The investigation was handed over to the National Security Planning Agency, South Korea's intelligence unit at the time. And soon, the chilling truth began to unfold. Mayumi's real name was Kim Yeon-hee, born and raised in North Korea. She was no ordinary traveler. She was an elite agent of the Foreign Intelligence and Investigation Department of the North Korean Workers' Party. And she had been given a direct order from Pyongyang, bomb Flight 858. Here is how they did it. Kim Yeon-hee and Kim Seung-il smuggled a time bomb and a liquid explosive onto the aircraft. They hid them in places the crew would never notice. Then, during the stopover in Abu Dhabi, they got off the plane. Mission complete. Hours later, the bomb detonated in midair, tearing the aircraft apart and killing every soul on board. The mission was over. North Korea considered it a success. But to the rest of the world, it was pure, calculated horror. But that leaves us with one haunting question. Why? Why would North Korea go so far as to bomb a civilian aircraft, killing over 100 innocent people? To understand that, we have to go back a few years to October 9th, 1983. That was the day North Korea revealed its true colors as a terrorist state by orchestrating the deadly Rangoon bombing at the Aung San Mausoleum in Myanmar. That attack, meant to assassinate key South Korean officials, was carried out by North Korea's liaison department, the agency responsible for operations against the South. But after Rangoon, North Korea changed its playbook. The regime realized that overt, large-scale attacks would draw too much attention, so they decided the next act of terror would need to be invisible until it was too late. And so a plan was born: bomb a South Korean passenger plane, not inside South Korea, but far away from home soil. But what drove them to make such a horrifying decision? Believe it or not, it all came down to the Olympics. The International Olympic Committee had just announced that Seoul, the capital of South Korea, would host the 1988 Summer Games. Now remember, this was the height of the Cold War. North Korea stood for communism while South Korea represented liberal democracy. And this Olympic announcement, it was a devastating blow to North Korea's pride. Hosting the Olympics was more than just a sporting event. It was a symbol of progress, prosperity, and international recognition. And for North Korea, it meant something worse: a clear signal that they were losing the ideological war. They feared their people would start to question their own government, wonder what life was like beyond their borders. So Kim Jong-il issued a chilling directive to the liaison department: do whatever it takes to sabotage the Seoul Olympics. From North Korea's perspective, there was only one way for a politically and diplomatically isolated regime to disrupt the games: terrorism. They believed that if they caused a major international incident, the world would fear traveling to South Korea, maybe even boycott the Olympics altogether. It was a twisted plan. But here's what's even more chilling. This wasn't a last-minute idea. For years, North Korea had been preparing for something like this. Even if the bombing of KAL 858 hadn't been set in stone from the beginning, a terror attack of some kind was always part of the plan. Since the early 1980s, North Korea's liaison department began recruiting and training elite female agents, future terrorists handpicked from top universities like Kim Il-sung University and Pyongyang University of Foreign Studies. They trained over 200 women, turning them into weapons in human form, teaching them espionage, foreign languages, sabotage, and stealth. Among those recruits was Kim Yeon-hee. While studying at Pyongyang University of Foreign Studies, she caught the attention of North Korea's intelligence leaders. Soon, she was pulled into an entirely different life, trained, groomed, and shaped into a deadly agent. By July 1984, the plan was in motion. Kim Seung-il and Kim Yeon-hee, two North Korean operatives, began their intensive training for a terror mission, posing as something no one would expect: a Japanese father and daughter on holiday. Their training was nothing short of meticulous. They went through countless simulations, learning the ins and outs of international airline procedures, airport security protocols, and boarding routines. Every move had to be perfect, every gesture rehearsed. From August 15, 1984, their training took them across Europe, blending into bustling cities and unfamiliar cultures. They traveled through Vienna, Copenhagen, Frankfurt, Geneva, and Paris, not for sightseeing, but for local adaptation training, designed to help them slip unnoticed through foreign environments. But imagine for a moment, what did they see as they walked the streets of these world-famous cities? Did they ever pause to take in the beauty of Vienna's old town? Did they hear the laughter of children in Parisian cafes or see lovers strolling along the Seine? And did they ever, even for a fleeting second, feel a pang of doubt? Did they wonder what life could be like outside the grip of North Korea? Or had the weight of their mission already crushed any sense of escape? Whatever thoughts may have passed through their minds, it didn't matter. The path had already been chosen. There was no turning back. From January to June 1985, Kim Yeon-hee underwent intensive Japanese language training to complete her disguise. And her instructor was Taguchi Yaeko, a Japanese woman who had been kidnapped by North Korea and forced to assist in training agents like Kim. When the shocking truth came to light years later, Japan was outraged. Their own citizen had been abducted and used to train a terrorist. And Japanese wasn't the only language Kim was taught. She also received specialized training in Chinese, turning her into what could only be described as a state-manufactured elite agent, a weapon shaped by a regime. Between July 1985 and January 1987, she was sent on assignment to cities like Guangzhou in China's Guangdong province and Macau, where she absorbed the language, culture, and lifestyle, another layer in her long-term cover story. Years of preparation carefully orchestrated for one purpose. Then, finally, the moment arrived. On October 7, 1987, a special directive came down directly from Kim Jong-il. It was a handwritten order passed through the head of the North Korean liaison department. The message was chilling. Blow up the South Korean passenger plane KAL Flight 858 in midair. Make sure the world does not participate in the Seoul Olympics. The operation was a go. On November 27th, around 7 p.m., Kim Yeon-hee and Kim Seung-il boarded a train. Their destination was Belgrade, the capital of what was then Yugoslavia. There, they met with a man known only as Mr. Choi, who handed them their weapons: a time bomb disguised as a Japanese Panasonic radio, and a liquid explosive hidden in a liquor bottle. 2 days later, on November 29, 1987, KAL Flight 858 exploded in midair, exactly as planned. 115 lives were wiped out in an instant. The mission, from the regime's perspective, had been completed. Kim Seung-il, as we know, took his own life using cyanide, but Kim Yeon-hee survived and was brought to Seoul for questioning. When she first arrived, she tried to keep up the act, pretending to be a Chinese woman who couldn't speak a word of Korean. But during one interrogation, she overheard an investigator mutter in Korean, "She keeps lying." And without thinking, she blurted out in Chinese, "What lie am I telling?" That was it. The moment her cover crumbled, she had understood everything. There was no denying it anymore. Bit by bit, as the evidence piled up, Kim Yeon-hee finally confessed. She was a trained North Korean terrorist. When word of her confession reached Pyongyang, Kim Jong-il responded in the only way he knew how. He ordered all of Kim Yeon-hee's family members to be sent to political prison camps in North Korea, a brutal punishment for her betrayal. In 1990, Kim Yeon-hee stood trial in South Korea, and the verdict was the death sentence. The Supreme Court of South Korea delivered its final judgment. First, the court rejected Kim Yeon-hee's claim that she had been forced into the act. She had argued that she was just following orders, and she had no choice. But the court ruled that there was no evidence of threats to her life or physical coercion strong enough to justify what she had done. Yes, she had grown up under North Korea's ideological brainwashing, and yes, she'd been trained from a young age. But when it came down to it, the decisions she made were her own. At the same time, the court did recognize a few important points: that she had essentially become a human tool, molded by the regime, that she showed genuine remorse after her arrest, and that she was the only surviving witness who could fully uncover the truth behind the bombing. Still, none of that could excuse the fact that 115 innocent lives were lost, all for a political agenda. And for that, the court said she deserved the death penalty. And so, in 1990, Kim Yeon-hee's death sentence was officially finalized following her trial. But in a surprising turn, the execution was never carried out. Instead, she was granted a special presidential pardon, citing her value as a source of intelligence about North Korea's secretive liaison department. She had become more useful alive than dead. Then in 1991, she published a book titled I Want to Be a Woman Now. In it, she claimed to reveal the full truth behind the Korean Air Flight 858 bombing and offered a glimpse into the life of a woman raised not as a person, but as a weapon. But not everyone was convinced. Controversies and doubts soon began to swirl around Kim Yeon-hee's story. There were inconsistencies, strange gaps, and many began to wonder, was she really the highly trained agent she claimed to be? Her statements kept changing. Details didn't match up. Even small pieces of her personal history turned out to be provably false. People started asking, why lie about things that didn't need to be hidden? For instance, she claimed she had lived in Munsu-dong, Munsu District, Pyongyang City, but in reality, there is no such place in Pyongyang. She also said her father had worked as head of fisheries at the North Korean Trade Mission in Angola. Again, no such position exists in North Korea, but perhaps the biggest red flag was this. One of the main pieces of evidence used to support her story was a photo she had identified as herself in North Korea. But later, it came out that the person in the photo wasn't Kim Yeon-hee at all. It was a North Korean woman named Chung Hee-sun, who eventually stepped forward and said, "That's me in that photo." And so the questions grew louder. How could someone trained as an elite terrorist be so careless, so inconsistent with her story? Despite all these doubts, indirect confirmations of North Korea's involvement in the KAL 858 bombing continued to emerge. One telling moment came during a private conversation between a South Korean official and Lee Gun, North Korea's director of American affairs at the Foreign Ministry. He reportedly said, casually, "Since the KAL bombing, we haven't carried out a single act of terrorism." It wasn't a formal confession, but it spoke volumes. And over time, a mountain of intelligence evidence confirmed what many already believed. North Korea was, without a doubt, behind the attack. No credible evidence ever surfaced to suggest the incident had been staged or fabricated. And as the years passed, that truth only became clearer. Then in 2019, more than 3 decades after the tragedy, a new chapter unfolded. To mark the 32nd anniversary of the bombing, Daegu MBC in South Korea launched a special investigation into the KAL Flight 858 case. And for the first time in 32 years, they discovered wreckage believed to be from the aircraft, lying deep beneath the Andaman Sea off the coast of Myanmar. But progress came to a halt. A military coup in Myanmar, followed by the outbreak of COVID-19, brought all further search efforts to a standstill. To this day, a full recovery operation has yet to be completed. Still, there is hope that someday soon, a proper investigation can resume, that we will finally uncover the whole truth, and that the souls of those 115 innocent people lost so suddenly in the sky will finally receive the dignity, remembrance, and peace they deserve. And that is all for today. Thanks for watching.